Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on The Story Within, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The snow in our yard had melted into gray ridges that looked like someone forgot to put the winter away. Inside the house still smelled faintly of lilies from the funeral. I set an extra mug on the dining table out of habit and then moved it back to the cabinet. Thomas had been gone 3 days. Habits didn't know that yet. Avery Collins arrived in a navy overcoat, careful with his footprints on the runner. He'd handled our papers for 20 years and had the kind of voice that made even bad news sound formatted. Madison came 10 minutes late, winter sunglasses on. Though the day was dull, Ethan at her shoulder with that supportive half-smile he wore to weddings and board meetings. She hugged me the way busy people hug arms, not ribs, and sat where Thomas used to, as if playing the part made it hers. Avery opened a leather folio and cleared his throat. The radiator clicked in the wall. Somewhere in the kitchen, the pie press my grandmother left me rattled inside a drawer. Per Mr. Hart's will, he began the Westchester residence transfers in fee, simple to Ms. Madison Klein. His eyes flicked to me as if I might stand up and object on principle. I folded my hands. He went on. Additionally, a cash bequest of $31 million to Ms. Klein dispersed through a liquidation schedule. Madison's mouth barely moved, but I saw the calculation land behind her eyes like a marble finding its groove. Avery turned a tab. To Mrs. Evelyn Hart, a first-class plane ticket to Santa Barbara, California. He paused. Travel date tomorrow. A car will collect you at 5:30 p.m. The hotel is prepaid for an open-ended stay. I looked at the table at the shallow crescent moons Thomas had carved with his wedding band over the years when he drummed his fingers. Just the ticket, I asked, not angry, just confirming the dimensions of the room I was now in. Avery inclined his head. Per the public will, ma'am, yes. Ethan leaned forward, elbows neat. Voice soft as if this were a quarterly review. It could be restorative, Evelyn. Sunshine. Ocean air. Madison slid her sunglasses on top of her head, a glossy crown. Mom's always talked about California, she said brightly. This is Dad nudging her to finally take a real vacation. The lilies in my lungs wilted. Thomas was not a nudger. He researched to the cut line. When we remodeled the kitchen, he interviewed 4 contractors and held a pencil to every estimate like a man grading a test. A one-way ticket to somewhere warm wasn't his style or his mercy. We finished the formalities. Avery had me initial here and there. I watched my name appear in tight blue ink as if someone else were authoring me. When he left, he touched my shoulder and said a single word. Call the way doctors sometimes say breathe. That evening was quiet in the way a gym is quiet after the machines stop. The neighbor across the street, Mr. D'Angelo, put his trash out and lifted 2 fingers in a small salute. I waved back. The porch light hummed. In the living room, I turned off the lamp Thomas liked and then turned it on again. The house knows the weight of our hands, I thought. Maybe it would notice when mine was missing. At 8 the next morning, a box truck with a vinyl decal rolled into the driveway like it had an appointment with my grief. The men wore beanies and those cheerful neon vests that say, "We're here to help you change your life." Madison followed with a tote bag and a latte, cheeks already pink from the cold. She kissed the air near my face and walked into the kitchen like a realtor bringing clients through. We need to talk timing, she said, flipping open her iPad. Demo starts Monday, so we'll get your things packed today and tomorrow. My things, I repeated, and for a second the phrase had no meaning. This is my house. It's our house, she said gently as if correcting a child who'd mispronounced a word. Dad left it to me, Mom. I'll FaceTime you the progress. She opened the pantry, lifted a jar, set it down. The pie press clacked again in its drawer like it wanted to be counted. Ethan appeared in the doorway with a tape measure hooked to his belt, corporate casual, trying on manual labor. The crew needs access to the garage, he said. Insurance wants the locks changed before demo. Standard stuff. We'll give you new keys. Insurance, I said, and tasted the word. What needs insuring that isn't already broken? Ethan smiled without teeth. Process helps people feel safe. Madison slid a stack of printouts across the island mood boards, paint swatches clipped to glossy pages with tiny binder clips. On one sheet, a kitchen roughly the size of ours glowed in the kind of light magazines invent. We're taking down this wall for an open concept, she said, tapping the load-bearing beam like a drum. Stained concrete floors, matte black fixtures. The 80s wallpaper has to go. You know it does. I touched the corner of a photo where a faucet arced over a sink so white it hurt. My sink had a scratch in the bowl from where Thomas once tried to open a stubborn jar with a wrench. He had laughed about it for a week. When do I come back? I asked. It sounded small even to me. Madison's smile dimmed as if a cloud moved in front of it. I was thinking this is kind of a transition point, she said. California could be a soft landing. We'll ship anything you want, obviously, but living through renovations at your age won't be comfortable. She said it quickly and kept her eyes on the page. At my age, I said. The men in vests were carrying boxes down the hall, the kind labeled living room in black marker, as if the word could be relocated with tape. Mom, Madison said, and the tone was the one she used when she convinced Thomas to buy her first car light, almost musical. You'll have new restaurants to try. Yoga on the beach. You hate February here. I hate February everywhere, I said. The radiator clicked twice a metronome, marking out a harder rhythm. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced down and covered the screen with his hand, a boy caught with a lighter. Contractor, he said, and disappeared into the garage. Madison polished a non-existent smear off the island with the sleeve of her sweater. Don't worry about the keys, she said. For security, we're changing them today. The alarm code, too. Liability is wild right now. She spoke softly, kindly, like this was good news. It took a second for the sentence to settle anywhere in me. The front door opened. 2 men brought in a bundle of cardboard wardrobes and a roll of bubble wrap big enough to sleep in. Mr. D'Angelo stood at his mailbox and watched his mouth a small line I'd seen when his wife was ill. He lifted his chin again. God bless you, he called, and then pretended to fuss with a coupon flyer. I nodded, unsure which of us needed the blessing more. By noon, my wedding china was nested in paper that rasped like dry leaves. The radio on the windowsill, a battered little thing Thomas kept tuned to baseball every summer, went into a box, labeled Mais SC, as if the word could hold a season. Madison took a photo of the dining room for records, she said, angling her phone so the chandelier looked taller. I packed my own suitcase. It felt like cheating on the house. Scarves. The sweater with the elbow patch Thomas used to smooth absent-mindedly while we watched the weather. A paperback I'd been pretending to read. In the bathroom, I took the small blue bottle of perfume I wore to our 40th anniversary dinner. The cap clicked shut like a verdict. Avery called at 1:30. Car will arrive at 5:30, he said. The ticket's in your email. I'm available if you need anything. Do you know why I asked California? Avery was quiet for her breath. Mrs. Hart Thomas believed in clarity, he said. I can say that. Clarity. I repeated, looking at my kitchen stripped of magnets, the naked silver of the refrigerator door, shining like a sterile lake. All right. At 5, the crew coiled their extension cords. Madison stood in the foyer with a clipboard and her winter sunglasses back on. Text me when you land, she said. I'll have someone make up the guest room for when you visit, maybe by summer. The car idled at the curb, a black sedan with doors that opened like polite hands. I stepped onto the porch and locked the door because muscle memory told me to. Then I remembered the locks were changing and slipped the key into my coat pocket anyway. The air was pin bright. Mr. D'Angelo waved a third time. I waved back and got into the car. We rolled past the maple that drops its leaves first every fall, past the crack in the curb Thomas used to complain the town never fixed. At the corner, the driver asked airport or train. His voice had the chapped sound of men who sit in traffic for a living. Airport, I said, please. On the highway, the sun dipped behind warehouse roofs and turned the sky the color of the inside of a blood orange. The car smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. I watched the lane line spool forward and tried to drop my breath into my stomach like the yoga teacher on public television used to say. Across my lap lay a manila envelope with a printed itinerary and a note in Avery's tidy hand. Call if you need anything at all. The script was so precise it looked etched. People like that don't miss details. People like Thomas didn't either. I pressed my palm to the envelope and felt the stiff certainty of paper. Tomorrow I would wake up somewhere with eucalyptus and salt in the air. Today my house was a place where other people wore boots and carried my rooms out in pieces. Both facts could be true. I let them be true and watched the river keep its dark curve. The car moved south. The road didn't ask what I planned to do with any of this. It just kept going. The driver took the Van Wyck like he knew every bruise on it by name. At Terminal 4, I checked in, printed the itinerary Avery had also emailed, and answered 3 texts from Madison with the same sentence, I'll let you know when I land, because anything longer felt like opening a door I didn't want to hold for anyone. I slept in a hotel stapled to the airport and woke to the early flight west, my body convinced it was both too late and too soon. On the plane, the coffee tasted like a promise nobody intended to keep. Over Nebraska, the clouds lifted and the land unrolled in measured squares, stitched by roads straight as arguments. By noon, I was in Los Angeles then, on a small hop up the coast to Santa Barbara, where the runway breaks off almost into water and the air smells faintly of eucalyptus and sun-warmed asphalt. A man in a navy cap stood by the curb with a sign, Ms. Evelyn Hart. He took my suitcase like it contained a predictable future and led me to a silver sedan with sand gritted into the mats. Hotel El Mirador, Ms. Hart, he said, which sounded less like a question than a narrative that had already been written. We drove past low, white buildings and palm shadows wobbling across stucco, then climbed into the hills where bougainvillea threw ridiculous color against fences, and the ocean opened like a sheet of hammered blue. The hotel wasn't a palace. It was a cluster of terraced bungalows with red tile roofs, the kind of place where money hides in good taste. At the front desk, a woman with a linen scarf said, "Welcome, Mrs. Hart." Mr. Whitaker arranged everything. She slid a key card across the marble and a small envelope with my name in a careful hand I didn't recognize. In the room, the windows framed the city and the harbor beyond it, white boats pinned to their reflections. There was a bowl of oranges on the table and a note. "Mrs. Hart, if you're willing, I'll meet you on the terrace at 383. C. Whitaker." I showered breathing steam and travel out of my bones and sat a moment in the towel, counting the ways Thomas might have justified this place if he'd been with me. Earthquake retrofits, sprinkler systems, a contractor who actually returned phone calls. I dressed and went out to the terrace half an hour early. He was already there, a man in his mid-40s with a sun notch at the bridge of his nose and the kind of posture that comes from not needing to apologize for taking up space. "Mrs. Hart," he said, standing. "I'm Cole Whitaker. I'm sorry for your loss." He meant it without trying to arrange it. "Evelyn," I said, because Mrs. Hart belonged to the woman who stood next to Thomas at holiday dinners, not to the one who had flown here alone. We sat. A server brought water that winked in the light, and Cole set a worn black notebook on the table between us. "I worked with Thomas for the last 5 years, he said. West Coast Acquisitions Materials, the sustainability portfolio, timber rights, reclaimed steel, that kind of thing. He didn't do casual arrangements, as I think you know." I nodded. The hotel's fountain made a sound like someone rinsing out a bowl. He also didn't like to place full weight on any single lever, Cole said. "So there are 2 structures we need to talk about. There's the public will, which you've heard, and there's the Delaware Dynasty Trust he set up 3 years ago. I'm the administrative trustee. Your counsel, Mr. Collins, is trust protector. You are the primary beneficiary." Words like that make the shape even before you understand the dimensions. "Beneficiary," I said. "Of what?" Cole opened the notebook to a list that wasn't quite an inventory and not quite a story. 2 distribution centers outside Reno and Denver, he said, tapping lines with a clean finger. A minority stake in a mass timber outfit in Oregon, an operating company that leases battery storage facilities in Kern County, mixed-use parcels in Austin and Raleigh. He parked his unsexy assets where they couldn't be easily preened for show. And then there's the residence. He slid a single manila folder over. Inside was a deed with a plat map shaped like a wing. The name on the line was mine. "Residence," I repeated, because saying it once hadn't convinced my mouth. "Where?" "In the Riviera," Cole said. "North side of the ridge. 3 bedrooms, shaded patios, a kitchen someone built to be used, not photographed. He bought it 2 years ago. Furnished it this spring." He was particular about some of the choices, counter-height window latches, the placement of a chair under a west-facing window. The sky brightened in a way that shifted every color a half-shade lighter. "You're telling me Thomas bought a house here and didn't tell me?" Cole's eyes softened, not with pity. "He recorded a few voice memos I'd like you to hear," he said, and took out his phone. "If you prefer another time, say the word." "Play 1. He cued a file. Thomas's voice came through thin and exact, the way he sounded when he was checking a beam with a level. "If she's listening, it means she got on the plane," he said. "Good. The house on Mira Vista has the light right. Make sure they install the pulls she likes. She'll point with her left hand and say, 'These feel like they were made for fingers, so don't let the contractor swap them out.' It was a nothing detail, the kind that stops the room." My left hand flexed on the table without being asked. Cole stopped the audio. "There are more, but I don't want to stack them," he said. He didn't treat this like a secret to enjoy. He treated it like scaffolding. The public will is one beam. The trust is another. Together they carry load. "Tactical," I said, and heard Thomas in that word, the way he always routed a problem through the studs, instead of punching the drywall with solutions that looked good until winter. Cole took a breath. "I know what it looks like from Westchester," he said. "A one-way ticket and a daughter with contractors scheduled. I won't comment on family. But I will say this much. Thomas didn't leave you a plane ticket because he ran out of imagination. The server replaced our waters because that's what servers in places like this do when they can't fix anything else." Cole slid a second document over pages that wore the ink of a lawyer's appetite for contingencies. "The trust throws off income on a schedule," he said, "but the assets are designed to grow. There are safeguards. You'll want Avery to walk you through spendthrift provisions, trustee removal powers, tax posture. The point isn't to bury you in paperwork. It's to make sure no one can tilt the table if they don't have the legs to carry it." I imagined Madison saying the word trust as if it were a spa treatment and not a set of instruments. The thought passed through me like a draft. "Do you want to see the house?" Cole asked. He said it the way someone asks if you want water, not fireworks. "Yes." He drove a sensible car that could find a parking space on a hill that would have made a Midwestern driveway cry. We climbed past houses terraced into the earth and stopped at a gate tucked under a pepper tree. The key he used had weight. The courtyard beyond smelled of lemon oil and heat. A tile fountain muttered in a corner, and a pair of chairs sat under an arbor of grape that would make sense in August. Inside, the floors were oak that didn't apologize for the knots. The first room was not a room that featured a couch. It was a room that let you sit down. To the left, a small study with a window exactly where afternoon would behave best. To the right, a kitchen with a farmhouse sink and the kind of stove that wants a recipe card held down by a spoon. On the counter, a note card in Avery's handwriting. The pantry is stocked, keys on the hook by the door. Cole let me walk without narration. I touched the back of a dining chair and the cool lip of a bowl on the island. In the bedroom, a quilt lay smooth as a fresh idea. The reading chair under the west window sat at an angle Thomas would have measured with his thumb in a squint. I put my hand on the armrest. The fabric had a faint herringbone I could feel more than see. In the closet on the top shelf, a small wooden box sat like a period at the end of a sentence. I lifted it down. The lid stuck, then gave. Inside a bank envelope from Montecito Savings and Loan with a safe deposit tag, a stack of 3x5 cards held by a rubber band and a note from Thomas in blue pen. His block letters serious, for when the house feels like it belongs to you. Cole stood in the doorway, not looking over my shoulder, which is a kind of courtesy most people have forgotten how to perform. I put the lid back and slid the box into place. Mrs. he began, then corrected himself. Evelyn, there's no pressure to make decisions today. If you want me to arrange a car back to the hotel, I can. I can sit, I said and did, in the chair by the west window. Through the glass, the ocean held its blue, like a person holds a breath without making a scene of it. The room had the hush of a place that had been waiting without complaint. Cole left a folder on the console table with the efficiency of someone who has put the same folder down in other rooms in other cities for other people who were not me. When he stepped outside to take a call, the fountain in the courtyard kept up its small talk. I rested my forearm on the chair and let the weight of paper inside the folder press a steady line into my palm. The house did not require me to be brave. It required me to turn the handle and test the hinge. I did, and the window opened on quiet hardware that had been chosen for the way it felt, not for any photo it might produce. The breeze carried eucalyptus and a trace of the sea, and for the first time since Avery said, "Car at 5:30, my lungs located the bottom of themselves and made use of it. The house took the late light the way a good face takes a compliment without fuss. Cole stepped back in from the courtyard and closed his phone like he was putting away a pocket knife. "Avery can join by video if you're up for it," he said. "There are a few things we should lay flat on the table." "Let's lay them," I said. We sat at the dining table. Cole opened a laptop and Avery appeared in a tidy square shelves behind him, arranged the way people arrange thoughts they plan to share. "Evelyn," he said, not Mrs. Hart. "I'm glad you arrived safely." Cole slid a slim tablet toward me. "Thomas authorized a temporary security package at Westchester," he said. "Nanny cams and a foyer cam tied to the alarm panel. Routine for insurance and given what's happening useful. The footage backs up what you've already felt in your bones. I can show you as little or as much as you want. Show me enough." He tapped a date. The kitchen filled the screen, but flatter a room under fluorescent truth. Madison and Ethan stood by the island. A bottle of something festive sweated in a silver sleeve. Madison's ring flashed when she lifted it. The audio caught just enough. 31, Ethan said, like he was reading a scoreboard. Madison laughed and covered her teeth with 2 fingers. "Mom's on a plane. By Monday, we swing a hammer." They toasted. She said lighter than air, "Keep it moving," and sent a text the camera couldn't see. Cole swiped. Another clipped the front hall winter coats swinging on the rack. A locksmith kneeled a tray of brass mouths open beside him. Madison signed a work order without taking off her gloves. "Change the keypad too," she said. "New code today." A third clip evening, the house lit like an apology. Ethan at the dining table with a laptop and a number that grew in a spreadsheet. "HELOC," he told his phone. "Yes, we can close fast." I watched my own furniture holding up a conversation that didn't make space for me. The sound in my ears turned thin, the way air does, right before a storm decides what to do with itself. Cole stopped the playback and set the tablet face down on the table like a lid. "Enough," I said. Avery's voice returned me to the room. "Evelyn Thomas anticipated scenarios that could put you under someone else's thumb. His estate plan isn't a trick, it's a brace. The public will is not the only instrument. The trust has provisions that allow us to redistribute or suspend any public bequest if certain conditions are met." "What conditions?" Avery consulted a page. "Removal of you from your residence within 30 days of his death. Substantial interference with your personal property. Any attempt to leverage the house's equity in ways that jeopardize your quiet possession. There's also a clause, no contest discouraging litigation by narrowing choices when someone reaches for courts before conversation. Translation, I said. If you direct us, we can pull the emergency brake, Avery said. We notify Madison's counsel that her public bequests are under review and we begin reassigning title consistent with Thomas's private instructions. I'll handle the paper and the phone calls. Cole will handle the physical world. Cole folded his hands. You don't owe me or Avery a performance, he said. You tell us what you want done and we'll attach verbs to it. My hands were steady on the table, palms flat the way I used to lay fabric before cutting out a dress pattern. Start the break, I said. Avery nodded once. I'll prepare notices now. Cole slid a legal pad and a pen toward me. If you'd like to list items we should recover from Westchester Personal Papers keepsakes, we'll dispatch a bonded service. They'll inventory and ship whatever you circle. I wrote without thinking. Pie Press Radio Anniversary, China. Thomas's Level, the quilt from Aunt May, the box in the hall closet with the summer photographs, my wedding album, the recipe cards, the necklace from my mother, the cedar chest. The pen made grooves I could feel through to the wood. Avery said he'd call back in an hour. Cole muted the laptop and took the tablet to the console. The house breathed around us, old oak taking on the day's last warmth. Do you want tea, he asked, and I heard the question for what it was, a way to put both feet on the floor. Yes, I said, strong. He boiled water and left it to steep as if patience improved leaves as well as people. When he set the cup down, steam laced the air, faint, bitter clean. You don't have to call her, he said. We'll deliver everything by letter and let time do the sorting. I'm going to call, I said, not to convince, to be clear. He didn't nod like a coach. He just slid his phone toward me and stood, leaving the room to its acoustics. I pressed Madison's name. It rang long enough to suggest she was screening, then clicked. Mom, she said, floating the syllable high. Did you land? How's the hotel? I found a farm-to-table place you'll love. They do a lemon. Stop, I said, quiet enough to register more than volume. I've seen the footage. A small silence. What footage, she said, not which. The locksmith at our door. The champagne in my kitchen. The loan on a house you don't own yet. The part where you said, keep it moving, before your father's coffee cup had gone cold under lilies. Oh, come on, Mom, she said, dismissive as breeze. Everyone changes locks for construction, and the line of credit is smart planning. The markets. Don't use the market's name to excuse your manners. Ethan's handling the financials, she said quickly, as if the fastest way out was through a person who wasn't on this call. You know how he is. He's just prepared. And the champagne Dad would want us to celebrate moving forward. He would want you to know the difference between forward and over. She exhaled and the sound carried an old impatience. You're making this harder than it needs to be. You're in California, which is great. We'll FaceTime. I'll send you paint options. You hate that wallpaper. I hate pretending the wallpaper is the problem, I said. Listen to me. This isn't a debate. I'm telling you what happens now. Now, she repeated, tasting the word like maybe it came with a coupon. You'll stop all work at the house. Today. You'll return my keys, you'll restore the alarm code, you'll inventory, and ship my belongings exactly as I list them, and you'll send me a letter paper, not text, stating what you did and why you did it. Not for court, for the truth. That's ridiculous, she said. I don't owe you You owe me my things and enough air to breathe. Dad left me the house and $31 million, she said, each word polished to a point. I'm within my rights. The rights are paper, I said. The obligations are wood and nails. Silence again. This one duller, the way quiet goes when a person runs out of lines and has to decide whether to perform a new play or leave the stage. Is this Avery? She said finally. Did he put you up to this? Avery follows instructions. Cole handles doors. I am the person telling them what to do. Hear me clearly, you will not borrow against the house. You will not list it. You will not send men with tape measures into the kitchen, where I learned your father's hands by the way he stole bread before dinner. If you want a future where I know your voice and you know mine, you'll do what I asked. If you don't, we'll let the instruments do their work. The instruments, she said, derision, trying to gather a crowd. Trusts and threats, that's classy. I'm old, I said, not naive, so yeah. There's a difference. Ethan came on the line without introduction, a door opening in a hallway. Evelyn, it's Ethan, he said, soothing as a hotel lobby. Let's be practical. We're just trying to... You'll refrain from speaking to me about practicality until you've carried a marriage across 40 winters, I said. Put Madison back. A small clatter, and then my daughter again, thinner now. You're overreacting, she said, but the word didn't have enough air in it to cross a room. I'm reacting exactly as much as the facts allow, I said. There's one more part. You'll make a written apology, not because paper cures anything, because you need to see the words you chose and the harm they travel to. You want me to humiliate myself, she said, anger showing its collar. I want you to tell the truth with your name under it. She breathed like someone finishing a sprint on a treadmill. Fine, she said. If it gets you to calm down, I'll write a letter and ship your box of whatever. But I'm not stopping demo. That would cost us. There are schedules. Cost me, I said. Schedules I didn't write. Her voice sharped. This is exactly why Dad and I made plans. You dig in. You make everything a test. No, I said. Your father made plans because he knew where load belongs. I'm not testing you. I'm measuring. She hung there suspended between outrage and arithmetic. I'll have Ethan email Avery, she said. We'll set parameters. You can't dictate from across the country. You'll do what I asked, I said. And if you don't, the people who know how to use paper will remind you what it's for. Is that a threat, she said. It's a boundary. She ended the call with the tidy sharpness of a door latch that has recently been oiled. The room held the click a second longer than sound requires. Cole came back in without questions. He poured more tea. Avery's square blinked alive again on the laptop. I've sent the first round of notices, he said. We'll courier formal letters by morning. I've also scheduled a retrieval team for your list. They'll meet Mr. D'Angelo across the street. He's agreed to watch the transfer. Of course he has, I said, and felt a tired gratitude find its chair. Cole set an empty folder in front of me. For the apology letter, he said. When it comes, if it comes. I left the folder closed. The light stepped down outside. The fountain in the courtyard kept talking to itself. In the study, I found a pen that fit my hand and a stack of index cards like the ones in the wooden box. On the first card, I wrote China wedding pack with sleeves between plates. On the next, I wrote Radio Summer do not plug to test. On the third, recipe cards leave rubber band on. I wrote until the stack thinned and the room took on the quiet that happens after a plan decides to be real. The window by the desk cracked open on clean hardware. The breeze moved the curtain a half-inch, just enough to prove the air had somewhere to go and was willing to take me with it. By morning, the ocean had put its blue back where it belonged. Cole arrived with coffee that tasted like someone had actually paid attention to the beans, and a tablet tucked under his arm. He set both on the counter, both on the shed. Avery filed notices last night, he said. At 7:13 your time, Madison's counsel served a petition to contest. What flavor, I asked. Undue influence, capacity, fraud. He said them like receipts. The tablet chimed. Cole glanced down. Avery's in his office, zoom in 10. We sat at the dining table again. Avery filled the screen shirt crisp tie looser than usual, which for him meant the knot existed in a different tax bracket. Evelyn, he said. We're executing the no contest provisions. I've also prepared a separate packet Thomas asked me to deliver only in case of litigation. He tapped something off screen. Before we discuss strategy, there's a recording you should see. Play it, I said. The window changed. Thomas sat in our old home office in Westchester, the banker's lamp throwing a sane circle of light across his desk. He looked the way he did when he checked a ledger line tired around the mouth, eyes clear as the day he taught Madison to ride a bike in the cul-de-sac. The bottom corner of the frame bore a timestamp and a notary stamp that made the whole thing feel heavier than it looked. If this is playing, he said, someone decided to fight paper with noise. I'm not available to mop it up. A breath, then the mild smile he used when he had to say something nobody wanted to hear. Evelyn, I'm sorry for the mess. Counsel for Madison. I am of sound mind. I know my name, today's date, the square footage of the Westchester house, and the batting average of the Yankees' shortstop in '96. The trust instruments are mine. No one leaned on me. He held up a pen, signed his name in one unbroken line I'd recognize anywhere, and angled the page so the notary's seal flashed. He set that aside and lifted another sheet of paper, thicker stock, our old letterhead with the house's address faintly blind embossed at the top. This part is simple, he said. If litigation is filed and not withdrawn within 72 hours of notice to counsel, title to the Westchester property shall be transferred to Habitat for Humanity under the attached deed of gift, irrevocable upon filing. Win or lose, nobody gets to sell what they were willing to burn down. Talk to Avery about the mechanism. He looked straight into the camera, then not at the paper. Madison, he said, and the name did not arrive with sugar. Courts are not erasers. Save yourself the billable hours. Call your mother, be decent. The video ended with the sound of his chair settling. The screen snapped back to Avery, who did not fill the silence. Past his shoulder, a wall clock murmured at the edges of the room. Habitat has already acknowledged, he said when the silence had lived long enough. If Madison withdraws within the window, the gift instrument remains unfiled. If not, we record at minute 72:01. Start the clock, I said. It started at 8:02 Eastern, Avery said. 68 hours now. Cole turned the tablet so the countdown Avery had added sat like a small sane threat. It ticked in minutes, not seconds. The house in Westchester existed as a number moving through our morning like a second hand. We spent the next hour with forms. Avery emailed a copy of the recording to opposing counsel with a polite note that read like a doorman who carries a good flashlight. Cole forwarded instructions to the retrieval team. I added 2 more items to my list. Thomas's leather tape measure, the yellow envelope of birthday cards from kindergarten years, when schools still used glue that smelled like almond. At 59 hours, my phone lit up with Madison's number. I stared at it until the third ring, then answered. "What did you do?" she said, the sentence already out of breath. "I didn't do anything," I said. "Your father did. I'm following directions." "You sent a video threatening to give away the house." "I sent a video in which your father explained what happens if you choose a lawsuit over a phone call." Her voice thinned. He couldn't," she stopped. "He wouldn't." "He did." In the background, I heard Ethan put it on speaker, metal against wood, paper being moved as if the sound could carry weight in a court. "Evelyn," he said smooth, "this is unnecessary escalation. We can resolve adult matters like adults." "You opened a home equity line on a property with a fresh grief notice taped to the refrigerator," I said. "You forfeited adult." Madison came back a little ragged now. "We'll fight this," she said, but it sounded like someone trying to shout underwater. "He can't donate the house out from under me. It's nobody's if you insist on a fight," I said. "That's the point." She went quiet. "Then I need time." "You have 68 hours, I said. Now 67. She hung up without the satisfaction of a click. A minute later, a voice note arrived, a short, halting exhale of contrition without nouns. I listened and put the phone face down on the table screen to wood. At 48 hours, Avery CC'd me on a letter to Madison's attorney, a summary of the video's notarization, the trust's no contest language, the deed of gift, the timing. Proper nouns marched in formation. Habitat's counsel had countersigned with a line that looked like a fishing hook. At 36 hours, Cole drove me down Cabrillo so we could meet his contact at Montecito Savings and Loan. The safe deposit box yielded things that should not have been as heavy as they felt. A set of duplicate keys labeled in Thomas's block letters. The original marriage certificate, a singular Polaroid of us under the Coney Island boardwalk in a summer that didn't know it was the last easy one. On the way back, a text from Mr. D'Angelo. The men came for the boxes. They wore gloves. I watched. He added a period at the end as if that were the part that required gusto. At 23 hours, Avery pinged again. Opposing counsel proposes a standstill if we extend the deadline. I wrote back, no. Cole didn't try to tune the shape of my answer. He heated soup in a small pot without asking if I was hungry and set it down with bread that knew enough to be crusty and warm. At 12 hours, a courier in a blue jacket buzzed the gate. Cole met him at the door. The envelope he carried had weight and a tracking barcode that would not lie on anyone's behalf. Cole set it on the table and stepped back. I slid a knife under the flap and lifted out 3 pages. Notice of withdrawal. The title stared back in the language of people who like their nouns to carry weight. Below it, Madison's signature recognizable impatient, the loop on the M, bigger than the paper had room for. Attached a letter on her stationery with the PR firm's logo in the corner. I'm withdrawing my petition in its entirety. I acknowledge arranging work at the Westchester residence and changing the locks. I initiated a HELOC application. I failed to provide my mother with keys or access. I am returning her property in full. She had dated it, then written the time beside the date, as if she understood clocks mattered today. I handed Cole the legal pages and kept the letter. It wasn't an apology. It was ballast. It would do for the next few yards. Avery called. "We're within the window," he said. "I've confirmed receipt with the court and Habitat. The deed of gift is unfiled. Title remains where it is. Thank you, I said. He hesitated. "There may be a second wave," he said, foot-stomping, saber rattling. "We'll ignore what can be ignored." "Do that," I said. At 9 hours, another courier arrived, this one with a small box and a list taped to the top in Madison's block-type radio baseball, pie press grandmothers, China wedding, recipe cards rubber band left on, tape measure leather. Inside each item was wrapped the way you wrap a truth you're not ready to say. I lifted the radio last. Its dent looked smaller here under California light. Cole took the empty wrapping and folded it the way neat people fold maps. He didn't speak. Outside, the fog that rolls in most evenings stopped at the edge of the hill and thought better of it. At 2 hours, a text from an unfamiliar number. "This is Ethan. I'll be staying elsewhere for a few days. No salutation, no apology, a weather report disguised as logistics." I deleted it. Weather moves. At 1 hour, Avery sent a single line, "We're clear." He did not add congratulations. He knew better. The house took the news without comment. The tile in the kitchen held the same coolness it had in the morning. I set the radio on the windowsill and the pie press on the second shelf of the pantry and the tape measure in the drawer where drawer things belong. I did not plug in the radio. Some things don't need to prove they still work. Cole checked the gate and turned off the porch light. I poured water and sat at the dining table with Madison's letter, its sentences arranged like planks someone meant to walk on without looking down. The countdown on the tablet had gone black. The screen borrowed the room and gave it back. The fountain in the courtyard murmured a language I could follow as far as the noun stone water time. I let them be enough and watched the last of the light go thin over the ridge. Morning came in clean layers, marine haze pulled back to the edge of the hill, a pale stripe of sun across the oak floor, the soft tick of a house that knows how to carry weight without complaint. I set Madison's letter on the dining table and smoothed the crease with my thumb. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. It was accurate. Sometimes accuracy is the first plank you lay when you're rebuilding a bridge you burned yourself. Cole arrived late for him with a paper bag that smelled like cinnamon and a mason jar of flowers clipped short. Caretaker confirmed entry at Westchester, he said, placing the bag on the counter as if breakfast needed proof of life. Boxes came out under Mr. D'Angelo's eye and went into storage. No one argued with a clipboard. Good, I said. He didn't reach for the letter on the table. He could have. He didn't. Avery called from his office where the light always looks like fairness. Title remains as is, he said. Opposing counsel has withdrawn. Will memorialize the stand down in writing. I recommend we file a quiet title action anyway. Locks belong to whoever holds the keys. File it, I said, and heard Thomas in the way the words left my mouth, no velvet, just the clean edge of a cut made square. By afternoon, the fog had changed its mind and rolled in after all, a soft animal settling on the shoulders of the ridge. I made a list on the kitchen pad because I have always trusted ink. On it, call gas company, add my name to bill, schedule window washing, find a place for the radio. I crossed off the first two and stood at the third pen over paper as if a verb might present itself. The radio sat on the sill in its California light dent, smaller than I remembered, or maybe my hands larger. A text from Madison arrived at 3:07. I'll send another box tomorrow. The quilt, the photo albums. I'm sorry about how fast we moved. No punctuation. I read it once. I read it again. Then I wrote back. Please include the recipe for the cranberry cake. It's on an index card with a coffee ring. She replied with a single word. Found in a picture of the card. The ring like a planet around the word sugar. That evening, Cole took me to a small place on a side street where the napkins are cotton and the salt is in a bowl that looks handmade on purpose. He ordered halibut because he is a person who orders fish in towns where the boats still tell time. We didn't talk about trust provisions. We talked about trailheads and where the fog goes in July, and the kind of people who fix things without telling you they fixed them. When the check came, he set his card on top of it with the absent confidence of a man who knows which pocket holds his wallet and which holds a set of hex keys. On the way back, we drove past the courthouse pale and square against the lavender sky. The bell wasn't ringing. The world doesn't mark time for private victories. 2 weeks after the deadline, a courier brought another envelope from Madison. No legal letterhead this time, just her handwriting, aggressive and familiar. Inside was a page from a spiral notebook, the ragged edge still clinging to the wire. Mom, it began, and then there was a paragraph that did what paragraphs are for it contained. It didn't beg, and it didn't barter. She wrote about the noise in her head when the house got quiet. She wrote for once without defense that she had stood in the kitchen and found the pale crescents Thomas's ring made in the table and put her fingers there and felt nothing she could spend. She wrote the word sorry where it belonged, not at the top like a flag, but in the middle of a sentence that had to carry it. I read it twice and put it in the drawer with the tape measure. Wood, paper, measure, keep. Avery came by the house with a stack of documents that could have been a door if you hinged them. 2 quick things, he said, which is the sort of sentence lawyers say when they mean this will take the amount of time required. First, the grandchildren. If you're willing, we can open custodial accounts for education and health expenses only. The trust allows direct benefits to minors without routing through their parents. He let the sentence rest on the table like a tool waiting for a hand. Yes, I said, do that. I pictured small hands tearing paper on a birthday morning and decided the color of the paper didn't matter as much as the cake underneath. Second, he said Cole mentioned you'd been approached by a housing nonprofit. Cole put his coffee down. They've got a board seat open, he said. They build infill units on lots the city forgot it had. They need someone who knows kitchens as rooms and budgets as realities. Thomas would have asked for bylaws and a balance sheet and then said yes. I asked for those things and said I'd come to one meeting and keep my mouth shut for the first half, which is a promise more people should practice. On Sundays, I call the Westchester number and let the phone ring out. It goes to a voicemail box that still carries Thomas's name because some administrative backend has not yet caught up with our private timeline. Hearing him say, leave a message steady, middle of the road, put something back where it belongs for 12 seconds. I don't leave messages. I hang up and make coffee and sit in the chair under the west window, the light falling across my knees like a practiced hand. Madison started sending envelopes that aren't legal and aren't urgent. A photograph of the house in afternoon light snow like sifted flour along the hedge. A drawing by my granddaughter that looks like a family if I tilt my head and call the green square a dog. A photocopy of a therapy worksheet with the questions blacked out and her answers left visible. On one, she had written in her company's tidy sans serif, "I mistake control for care." Under it, smaller, "I don't want to anymore." I don't teach her anything over text. I send her a picture of the cranberry cake cooling on a rack. She replies with a picture of a yellow legal pad covered in lists, quilt washed, albums packed, china last box left, locks restored. She ends with "thank you for answering." I answer with "I always did," and then delete the 3 words, because I do not need to win small fights. The house learned me quickly. The porch switch is left to right, not up and down. The window latches bite clean if you angle the handle at 45 degrees. The faucet needs a second to find its temperature, like a person who enters a room and forgets why they came. I keep a small bowl of lemons on the counter and a pair of gardening gloves by the back door, even though I have not yet touched the dirt. I will. The dirt isn't going anywhere. One afternoon, when the fog stayed out to sea and the sky ran a full set of blues, Cole drove me to a trailhead above Mission Canyon. The path was a polite incline, the kind that insists you remember your knees. We walked without filling the air. At the top, the city spread out like something placed carefully on a tray. "Nice," Cole said. I said nothing and let the view make its own argument. On the way down, he pointed to a little stucco place with a tile roof sliding into itself and said, "We built that one back straight." He didn't say we can fix anything. He didn't need to. When we got home, there was a package on the step from Westchester, no handwriting, just a label. Inside, the quilt washed and folded so the faded blue squares held their lines. A Ziploc bag with the recipe card's rubber band still on. A crumpled paper napkin I recognized from a birthday we held in the dining room when the boys were small and the cake fell in the middle and we called it a canyon and filled it with strawberries. The napkin had a smear of red, exactly where you'd expect it. I lifted the quilt and felt the weight of cotton that has been handled kindly for years. Objects remember. It's not mystical, it's use. That night I moved the reading chair a half-inch to the left. The angle had been right. Now it was better. I took the radio from the sill, wrapped the cord around its base in a loose loop, the way Thomas taught me, so wires don't learn bad habits, and set it on the shelf beneath the window. I didn't plug it in, not because I was saving anything, but because silence was doing a job and doing it well. Avery sent a final envelope with tabs that told me where to sign. I signed. He took the pages, his fingers careful, and put them in a case that would go to a room where paper is kept at a particular temperature because someone decided paper deserves that. After he left, Cole checked the latch on the gate and turned the porch light back on. "You're set," he said, not like a promise, just as inventory. I drove alone the next morning, the car a small obedient animal on the curve of the Pacific Coast Highway. Windows down, the air tasted like eucalyptus and ocean and the vague metallic note of seaweed drying on rocks. A cyclist went by in a red jersey, legs pistoning with their own private math. I pulled over at a turnout and stood at the guardrail long enough for the sky to prove it could hold itself up. A gull pinned itself to the wind and changed its mind with no ceremony. The line where water met air ran straight. I let my breath take the shape of it and didn't ask it to do more. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.